Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have a great show coming up for you today on GoJo and Golic. Lots to get into. Okay, Brian Flores, he responded to those Tua comments. We will get into that. And when will Bo know? Sean Payton says he's getting closer to naming his starting quarterback. And we got some great guests today. Chargers OL Joe Alt and new LSU QB Garrett Nussmeier. We are going to have both of them on the show, so make sure that you stick around. We're getting into it right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield here. We got a great show for everybody. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday right here on the DraftKings Network. We got all those great guests that Jesse mentioned. We've got tip culture making its way into college football and a very interesting delay and missed flight to Hawaii for one team trying to kick off their college football season. So we can get to plenty of that as we go along here. But, Dad, it is I think the end of the back and forth saga now in the case of the Tua Tagovailoa comments about Brian Flores. As yesterday, as Jesse mentioned, for anyone that missed it, Tua Tagovailoa, in an interview with our friends at the Dan Le Batard Show right here on the DraftKings Network, said that Brian Flores, as a coach, had belittled him, made him believe that he had been less than, and Mike McDaniels had to come back in and build him up. He was on record and called Brian Flores a terrible person. All these things, very candid, displaying the relationship that had gone on behind closed doors there and what it ultimately, in his mind, led to Mike McDaniel coming and being a part of him. For Brian Flores, who is the active defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, that's kind of a big deal to have a star player in the NFL and a guy that played for you as a head coach coming out and really indicting your character publicly in front of the rest of the league. So yesterday, Brian Flores did get up in Minnesota and address these comments in front of the media, and here is what he had to say.
Look, I'm human, so, that hit me in a way that, I wouldn't say it was, positive for me. But at the same time, I've got to use that and say, hey, how can I grow from that? How can I be better? And that's really where I'm at from that standpoint. Do I feel like, that's me? No. But, how can I grow from that situation and create a world where that's not, the case that anyone says that about Brian Flores?
Now, Dad, he began this press conference flanked by two of his defensive players, Vikings safety Josh Metellus and D lineman Harrison Phillips, were both out there with him, which I thought was interesting and noteworthy given the nature of this conversation. So did that seem like enough from Brian Flores to sort of calm the fires around this situation?
Well, yeah. I mean, in a sport full of testosterone and machoism, I thought it was pretty introspective by Brian Flores. Considered one of the best D coordinators out there, and his game plan is attack. And as I use the word introspective, he seemed to really, now whether that was truthful or taking the high road, I don't know. But you just have to take somebody at their word, where he was kind of looking inside saying, okay, he went third person, that's not Brian Flores, or he's got to work on it. But it's showing support from his players was a cool thing, because he's always had support from most players. Again, Tua is the only one who has spoken up. We're still waiting to see if others would speak up as well about how they were treated. But this was really an individual thing with Tua and Brian Flores. But I thought it was very, very looking to his inner Brian Flores about, okay, maybe I didn't present the best person to Tua, and I wish him well. Again, whether that was truthful or whether that was the high road, I don't know.
Yeah, I think for Brian Flores at that point, he was a first-time head coach, so the idea that he could grow from that experience, that's not a crazy thing to say. But I'm with you. waiting for other players, because it's not like a scoreboard thing where we're waiting to see, well, how many players are on the side of Brian Flores and how many players aren't. But just like we said with Tua the other day, and I've always maintained this, it's very unusual for a player to feel so strongly about a coach that they would willingly speak up like this on their name in public, let alone while both of them are still an active part of the NFL fraternity. But just on the other side of that, Dad, you're not going to go out there and back up a coach that you don't actually mess with. And I think for these guys in the Vikings, I was waiting to kind of see, would there be players that come to his defense? Is this a case where, like we always talk about, there are going to be some guys who do get along with that Brian Flores style of coaching? And maybe there were specific things germane to Tua in that situation there that did cross the line. That is absolutely possible, and I'm not discounting that. But on the other side, it didn't seem that Brian Flores, at least in this, was someone that was totally villainized by all the guys playing for him, and that was some universal experience. And again, it just speaks to how complicated this is. And Dad, you've always talked about it. Yeah. Football locker rooms are big places. There are a lot of different personalities in there, and everybody is going to receive these different motivation tactics, these different things in a different way, and a lot of times. And for some guys, it'll work. Some people have talked about the differences. I heard I forget who it was yesterday talking with Ryan Clark about this on Get Up, but a former player was basically saying, hey, some of this could be the difference between a defensive style head coach and a guy who came from that side of the ball, especially under the Belichick tree, and someone different. So there's a bunch of things that can factor into this that ultimately lead back to the same place, which is we still don't know a lot about what went on behind closed doors here, aside from Tua's statement. And I think for Brian Flores, there was going to be no win if he went word for word, bar for bar, trying to address everything that Tua said.
Yeah, I agree. And we, again, still haven't heard from any other players to Tua's side or to Brian Flores' side. We had two players standing there backing up Brian Flores, but we haven't heard any talk of that's not Brian, or, yeah, I had a similar experience that Tua had. And it was a first-time head coach, and he was cut from the Belichick tree. He was there for, 15 years under Bill Belichick? And we know other assistants that have gone on to be head coaches from Bill's lineage didn't fare very well. Now, he fared a little bit better, wins and losses, but personality-wise, they were a little rough around the edges. And, that was kind of a trait of the Belichick assistants who went out and became head coaches and ultimately failed at being head coach. I think Bill O'Brien was the most successful one, winning a few division titles. But for the most part, they had failed, and they had personality issues. So maybe this was a combination of Brian being under Bill, being a first-time head coach to try and set the mark. But as we'll continue to say, there's different players that take things different ways. And maybe no other current players will come out and speak about it because he's a current coach. But former players, you would think in this day and age of social media where everybody has a microphone and everybody can get a quote in, that we would have heard more, and we haven't heard more. So I think this one is going to lay to rest.
Yeah, I would hope so. And I think for Brian Flores, you did everything you could to get it to that point. Because again, if he had gone through and tried to itemize an answer for everything that Tua said, I think that pours more gas on a situation where if you're him, he said it at the end of this press conference, I'm focused on the Vikings. He's got a whole defense full of guys that don't play for the Miami Dolphins that he's got to focus on anymore. So basically, going the route that he did, wishing Tua well, is his best opportunity, I think, to keep this thing moving in another direction. Like we said, if more players come out, if we hear more comments, maybe from other guys in that Miami locker room that were around that situation, now all of a sudden this could take on a bit of a different life. But again, it's all the things that we said yesterday overall in this situation. There is obviously a very big difference between tough coaching and demeaning. And I've seen and been around both. We both have. You mentioned you played for Buddy Ryan. Like, there's a difference between someone that's going to grind you down that you know has your best interest in mind and is trying to get the best out of you, but in a way that's going to challenge you, in a way that's going to stress you the way few things have, and someone who's just there to be demeaning because they think that's what tough coaching is, but they don't have the investment on that other side. I've always said you earn the right to coach somebody hard by showing them first how much you care. And we don't know the specifics enough of this situation other than, again, Tua, who is entitled to his personal feelings about this, telling us this is how it affected me personally. Forget the wins and losses. We know his personal stats got better with Mike McDaniel and the addition of those weapons. But all the people trying to win lost this. It's not about that. We're not trying to indict Brian Flores, the overall effective coach. In my mind, we're talking about his relationship with the most important player in that building and the star quarterback that apparently did not land with that player.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As we mentioned earlier, and go around and around, there's 53 different guys and personalities. Well, when you're a head coach in that locker room, Brian's a defensive coordinator, so it's on the defensive side now. And everybody likes to be coached differently or likes a coach a certain way. And as we know in football or in sports, you know what? You don't always get coached the way you want to get coached. And coaches will have their personalities. And sometimes, Bill Belichick had his personality. We keep going back to him, but he had a tree of assistants that would go out and not do as well as head coaches, trying to do it the Belichick way. And it worked for Bill and didn't work for others. I don't know if Brian has changed. I don't know we don't know how other players took Brian Flores coaching because we haven't heard anybody. This was a singular situation with the most important person on a team, the quarterback, who took to heart some of the demeaning things he felt Brian Flores was saying to him. And again, we don't know what other players thought on any of the other teams Brian has been with, New England to Pittsburgh to Minnesota. We don't know what other players thought because we haven't heard from them. So I think we separate this situation because we haven't heard from anybody else.
Yeah, so in theory, this should be the end for now. We will wait and see if more comments come out. But Brian Flores, I was looking it up on the schedule, would have given anything for the gods to have blessed us with Vikings at Dolphins at some point this season. So maybe it's possible. Obviously, they're both on opposite sides of the ledger, so they would have to meet in the Super Bowl if that was going to work out for all of us. And I don't think that for the Minnesota Vikings that are currently dead last in the odds to win their own division in the NFC North now after the J.J. McCarthy injury especially, probably an unlikely scenario there. Jesse, hopefully more likely for Cincinnati Bengals fans that they can get things resolved. Let's tap back in. We've talked a little bit about CeeDee Lamb lately. We've talked about some of the other holdouts around the NFL. The Brandon Ayuk saga still spins around. And then there's Jamar Chase, who we got a little bit of new information about yesterday.
Yeah, so as a recap, as we know, he has reported to training camp but hasn't played because he's seeking that long-term contract extension, so he's holding in. Bengals owner Mike Brown has said he'd rather negotiate a deal like this in the offseason. So he has 2 years remaining on his rookie contract, including the team's fifth-year option. Here's what Adam Schefter had to say about how Chase's situation differs from some of those other ones that we've been talking about.
I think right now this is the one that to me remains the most mysterious because unlike Brandon Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase has 2 years left on his contract, not one, like those other players. And we've already heard the Bengals president, Mike Brown, come out and say that he would prefer to wait to do this deal. Now, I think Cincinnati still will push to get this deal done. But from my understanding, there hasn't been a whole lot of progress. And if there's not a whole lot of progress, you wonder what's next.
So we're hearing there hasn't been a ton of progress here on this front. So how do you guys feel about this? I mean, you think that the Bengals have to get a deal done here, right? You don't want, Joe Burrow to be upset going into the season.
No, and that'll be the interesting part of this, Dad, is you have Joe Burrow coming back off an injury right now. You've got an offense where T. Higgins is playing on the franchise tag, and they're facing the prospect of losing him. And, you see more practice highlights come out of T. Higgins looking great there, so I'm sure it kind of sucks to think about that being gone. And I think ultimately this kind of falls in the same category as the CeeDee Lamb thing for me again. And Jamar Chase, I believe, has more years left on his deal than the other guys we're talking about in this situation. And so it complicates things a bit, but this is a guy that's going to be a Bengal for the entirety of his career, you'd imagine. But once again, this is a franchise where historically getting guys paid has not always been the easiest thing.
Well, yes, he has 2 years left on his deal, including a fifth-year option where Ayuk and CD are on their fifth-year option, where you would normally see a deal get done. A player not playing on his 5th year, his last year option, though teams do have the franchise tag to kind of back that up now. But I don't see that happening with CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk. With Jamar Chase, I think Mike Brown saying I would prefer this to happen in the offseason. He means next offseason. He means when he's going into his 5th year. That's a lot of time when these deals get done. That's why, again, it's still a head scratcher why the CeeDee Lamb deal hasn't been get done. I know we'll get into that. But for Jamar Chase, I think to Mike Brown in Cincinnati, it's come a year too early. They still hold all the cards. Ocho Cinco, in his podcast said that he doesn't think Chase is going to step on the field. I don't know. I don't know, again, the value of now maybe missing a game or so, like we talked about Chris Jones from Kansas City on miss opening day against Detroit last year. But I don't know how much a player is going to sit out. That would be some serious resolve for and that's really the only recourse a player has is to withhold their services. And obviously, the common sense says the better you are, the more you withholding your services could affect the team, and it definitely could affect the Cincinnati Bengals. But I don't know. I don't know if this is a game of chicken. Will you really hold up? Because he's a hold in right now. He's going to meetings, but he's not practicing, so not being fined. But it's a rookie deal anyway, so that they can rescind the fines. So I don't know if it's drawing a line in the sand with a pen or a pencil. Of I'm not going to play unless I get a new deal, and Cincinnati thinking, we think you're going to play, and we'll do a next deal next offseason.
Interesting perspective that we got the other day from the Adam Schefter podcast from another former Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver and Chad Ochocinco, who had this to say on the entire situation.
If for some reason this deal doesn't get done this week or this season,
he's not touching the field.
He's not touching the field.
Not touching the field. This is one of the certain players, they can separate their love for the game and business. If it was me, I'd have been out there practicing. Deal or no deal. I don't care. But on the business side of things, Jamar, his team, they understand now. And this is the only way to get deals done. CeeDee Lamb is doing the same thing. Brandon Ayuk is doing the same thing. You have to let the owners know that you're able to separate the love for the game, the business, like the owners do.
And Chad Johnson also in that appearance said Jamar's deal will get done. He said probably this week. Now, I don't know if he's got inside information on that timeline or if that's just his guess based on where we're at in the NFL calendar, because we know this is a deadlines drive results league, and this is a time where for things like this, things tend to get done here. But as these 3 wide receiver contracts sort of swirl around right now, and again, you look this offseason, Justin Jefferson getting paid for a team that's got a rookie quarterback on that deal. A lot of the other quarterbacks, wide receivers that got paid on teams that had already signed their quarterbacks to big deals in the past. Cincinnati certainly falls into that category where, hey, you paid Joe Burrow. You allocated that money. In theory, that financial planning should have already included what you're going to have to dole out for Jamar Chase. And I understand at this point, it's probably really working in the margins of these deals where so much is already agreed on and you're trying to get the last few notes of this right, and everyone's seeing who's going to blink first.
Well, I mean, in the case of, and maybe Jamar will sit. Now, the money-wise, Brandon Ayuk is owed $14 million. CeeDee Lamb is owed about $18 million. For Jamar Chase, he's owed $1 million. Now, his cap hits $9 million because of roster bonus and signing bonus, but he's making $1 million this year. So maybe he will think I can deal with that now if he'd have to give back some of the signing bonus, prorated, blah, 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 who knows. But it's a different than sitting and missing $14 million like Ayuk or $18 million like CeeDee Lamb. So we'll see. And the CeeDee Lamb situation, it seems like they offered him second to Justin Jefferson money, and that's still not getting it done. So we wait and see there. But hopefully Ocho's right. Hopefully a deal is going to get done this week because that's a guy you need on the field.
Yeah, and if I were Jamar Chase, I would not be on that field for $1 million this year, given what I have shown you I mean for that team. So the dance continues for the wide receivers in the NFL, but coming up next, Some teams and rookie quarterbacks finding their dance partners. We'll take a look at the players that have already been named starters, who else could be in line, and what kind of season we expect from some of the youngest signal callers in the NFL. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. With the NFL season creeping closer and closer, teams are starting to solidify their week one rosters. Some guys have gotten the nod as starter while others are still waiting. And we got all eyes on Denver as we await a decision on the signal caller. 12th overall pick Bo Nix has been impressive in the preseason. He's competing for that job alongside Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. Now, Sean Payton sat down with Diana Rossini and Chase Daniel of the Athletic Scoop City podcast to explain his timeline for naming a starter.
Are you ready to name him the starter?
Yeah.
And why haven't you?
Listen, well, we haven't because there's a process that we started out at the very beginning. We said, hey, there's no reason to.
Yep.
All right, let's make sure he's getting his work, and let's make sure Stiddy's getting his work. This frickin' Zach Wilson now, the last week and a half.
That's great.
I grabbed him and I said, look, I just want you to focus on having fun and playing. My job is to make you millions either with us or for another team.
Wow.
I think we felt everyone has an opinion on how they want to do that. Chicago certainly named Caleb the starter in the spring.
Yeah.
They didn't play him in the first preseason game. I think we're going to get closer to an answer probably next week.
Guys, Peyton speaking very highly of Zach Wilson there. But do you feel like this is Bo Nix's job to lose? What do you think?
Yeah, Dad, I would say this at this point, based on what we've seen outwardly, what we've heard inwardly, seems like a team that has fashioned itself around its rookie quarterback. Sean Payton, we know, was aggressive in going to get Bo Nix. We've seen and heard all the comps to the quarterbacks he's had before, like Drew Brees, in terms of his playing style. But I just think overall, Bo Nix has come out and answered the bell with all these rookie quarterbacks. You can understand, hey, Jarrett Stidham's been around the block and played some football. Zach Wilson, who he loved up, the same deal. They've already played football in the National Football League, but you're seeing the benefit of 61 collegiate starts in terms of preparation and how clean the pictures looked early on for Bo.
I do think it is his job to lose. I think he's just talking nice about Zach Wilson to talk nice about all the quarterbacks. I don't think Zach's in the mix for the starting job. I think it's Bo and Stidham, and I think Bo, a lot of it because of that experience in college, 61 starts. I mean, incredible. 3 years at Auburn, 2 years at Oregon. That he's coming in NFL ready. Even though systems can be different, he's had enough looks at defenses and play calls to be up on the NFL game. Still a rookie, still going to have growing pains. I get it. But I think you could see, from 1950 to 2020, there have been 3 occasions where 3 rookies started a season. It was 1968, 1969, and 2012. But if Bo's a starter this year, we could have that happen in 3 of the last 4 years. It happened in 21 and 23 and could happen again in 24. But this could be the most successful group because of the experience. You're talking about Jaden Daniels started as a true at Arizona State before making his way to LSU. And Caleb Williams, over 2 years of starting in college between Oklahoma and USC. You have some good experience, and Bo Nix, with 61 starts, you have some good experienced quarterbacks who saw a lot in college and didn't come into college with 13 starts or 15 starts or 17 starts or less, and try to assimilate to the NFL game. These guys have had more experience, which again doesn't make them automatic great players, but I think it gives them a bit of a leg up on becoming familiar with the system. And so
we had seen that pop up in the last few years, most notably with Brock Purdy, who was an incredibly experienced college player, but who lacked the high-end talent of the guys taken higher in the draft. It's why he ended up being Mr. Irrelevant, and then the story goes from there. But the conversation that came off that, even a little bit with Aiden O'Connell last year, who was another guy, played a lot of football in college, and then gets to the NFL, mid-round pick, lesser talented guy, but gets an opportunity and goes out there and, it's a mixed bag. It's a little more what you'd expect of someone with that talent level on a team that was also flawed. Like, again, the situation mattered, where with Brock Purdy, he went to a team that Trey Lance was on, that they had said, hey, we're going to mortgage our future for Trey Lance. We might take a little bit of step back, but then we're going to get this quarterback to elevate our ceiling. Then he got hurt, and they realized, hey, Brock Purdy has a ton of experience moving around an offense that looks a little bit like ours, and now we've gotten him better pieces and a better play caller. Hey, he can come in and man the ship around this and grow into that role, and we've watched him grow into that role. Now, with this group of quarterbacks here, I think it's interesting to look at them in almost 2 camps, because Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams are as talented as any quarterbacks we've had come out in quite some time. They also happen to have a bunch of experience. Caleb Williams got on the field his freshman year at Oklahoma before going with Lincoln to USC and playing and starting for the last 2 seasons. Jaden Daniels did start for the multiple years at LSU after he transferred, including starting at Arizona State before that. But they're also insane talent, so those guys were always going to be up there. Bo Nix a little more interesting, Dad, and I know Sean Payton waxed poetic about the thing that he thought was one of Bo Nix's biggest strengths that might get him a little bit away from that former camp of, hey, a guy whose ability might not be top-notch in the NFL, but definitely above average in almost everything. This is what Sean Payton said he liked the most about Bo.
I'd say the single most important trait, besides his processing, which is always hard to really measure, I'd say, is his ability to throw from a dirty pocket. There's just a little bit of penetration, and he can kind of take that quick step and be right on point. And we kept the new thing to do nowadays on these private workouts. These coaches have these guys running here and then throwing here, and it's like, what are you doing? They're all trying to do the Mahomes throw. But I want to see what happens in a game, and when you watch his off-schedule throws in a game, it's remarkable. It's noticeable.
And Dad, I think what Sean hints at there is kind of the thing that I always have to remind it for us is so much of quarterback play is stuff that on the outside looking in, it's a little bit harder for us to even quantify. He mentioned that processing piece that he knows well. That was the hallmark of so much of a quarterback generation that's come and gone, where you had the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses, on and on down the list. And now you've got quarterbacks a little bit more overt skill set, a little more athleticism. And I think the best thing for Bo in terms of what Sean just described there is Bo Nix, above average arm strength, not great arm strength. He's not going to go throw for throw with Caleb and Jaden. He's not going to be able to run with those guys necessarily either, but just strong enough and just mobile enough to be able to move around, but not enough to be able to rely on it out of structure. He's always got to be looking to get the ball out to the right spot and get it downfield, even when he's moving around a bit.
And let's throw in this. We'll be coaching him, right? So look at the other two starters. You have Caleb Williams. You have Shane Waldron, came over from Seattle. In Washington, you have Cliff Kingsbury. In Denver, you have Sean Payton. I mean, Sean Payton has worked wonders with quarterbacks, is known as a quarterback whisperer. Now, again, talent obviously is involved, and talent around you is involved. And it seems that Chicago is, of the three starting quarterbacks, Chicago has set themselves up with the best talent around their rookie quarterback. But as far as coaching and play calling and game planning, boy, oh boy, you could do a lot worse than Sean Payton leading your rookie quarterback onto the field.
You have. Now, Sean Payton doing it at that level without Drew Brees is still something we haven't seen, but he deserves a lot of credit for how he went about building this team around an aging Russell Wilson last year, as his skill set had changed a little bit and they had to reclaim him from what had happened during the Nathaniel Hackett season. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. The 70 burger on their defense early in the season kind of obscured our brains, but as it went along, they were able to corral Russell Wilson, get that offense to move and operate. So I'm with you, because folks in Washington, Dad, it really is wait and see with Cliff Kingsbury as the play caller there. Can he go and do anything other than become stagnant late in the season as he gets at the helm with this new toy?
And could we possibly see 4 quarterbacks start? Could Drake May? I don't think we believe he's going to get the nod. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy's out, Michael Penix is out, barring injury to Kirk Cousins. But I think Bo will be the starter, and I don't think Drake will. But, hey, hell, you never know. There's an outside chance you could have 4 of the 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 be starters. But I do think that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that one feels like more of a long shot at this point. But again, as you said, this was something for so long was foreign even at this level, and now has almost become a common part of the NFL. Coming up next, tip culture taking over college football. Where will they go next on GoJo and Golic? Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Much to the chagrin of my father, we've watched most of the world give way to QR code menus out at restaurants. I know, Dad, that's sometimes a point of frustration for you. You're a man who likes things physically held in his hands, so I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, paying with cash anymore is people almost look like they don't want to touch the money. And God forbid they have to figure out the change. I told the story about when a cash register was down and I made a purchase for like 17 and some change and gave the young lady a 20, and she looked at me like I had three heads because she had to figure out the change on her own. Yeah, I am a bit. I've jumped into the new school world a little bit, but yeah, QR codes. Just give me a menu. Give me my readers. And let me peruse it and decide what I want.
You do see it everywhere now, though. I've walked by kids' lemonade stands that have the QR code for their Venmos on top of the stand, which great entrepreneurial work from them. As someone who certainly doesn't carry cash on my morning walks, much more inclined to do that. Now we're going to see that in the world of college football, though, Dad. Oklahoma State has announced that this Tuesday announced that this upcoming season, they're going to put the QR codes on the back of their players' helmets that will link to a donation paid for the school's NIL fund, which is believed to be the first team in college football doing this. Now, Dad, A for idea, because if you've got a chance to dig into people's pockets, go ahead and do it. E for execution, because what's anyone supposed to do with a QR code that small when you're watching it on a normal sized television in your house or at the game in the stadium? Like, if you're going to do it, you might as well put it where the bleeping logo is on the side if you actually want this to pop for people, because I don't know how this is going to work in all practicality.
Well, they say it won't be visible from the stands on game day, but fans watching during television broadcasts will be able to capture it on their phone. Post-game pictures as well. There will be ways. I think this is an A for effort and execution, because what did it cost them? Putting a QR code on the back of a helmet. That's it. And what you get is all going to basically all be gravy from it, no matter what you get. Now, I don't know if you're going to get a lot, but you're going to get some. You're going to get some. And for the minimal effort it took to put a QR code on a helmet, you may get, I'm not going to say a maximum return, but you'll get some return, and something is better than nothing. I think this was actually a pretty good idea.
I think you should be putting it on the back of the signs you use to hold up the signals that go into the game right there. It's big. It still gets on TV every now and then. Yeah. People in the stands can see it. Why stop at just the helmets at this point? Like you said, it's a QR code. It's not super invasive. You don't have to engage with it if you don't want to. And Jesse, as we've seen everywhere else, you get asked to tip on everything now. So the idea of essentially having to leave a tip for going to the football game that you already paid for under the guise of making sure that state you say is good seems like it's pretty much the parlance of our time.
But how many people who are, watching at home or whatever are going to be trying to figure out how to get their money back when they wake up in the morning and realize they accidentally Venmo'd $1,000 or something like that? I want to know what the recourse is if you've had a few beers.
That is true, Dad. I think that's really at the core of this is they understand people like to drink during football games. And so if you can get someone who's all of a sudden hopped up because Ollie Gordon has rushed for 200 yards this game and the Pokes are looking great, and then you go and empty half the bank account into this one, it really is an incredible plan.
Yeah, well, or if you if someone helped you hit your bet or something, right? You can just give them a little, hey, thanks.
Well, isn't there on Twitter now? I know when I send something, it says you have 60 minutes to whatever to edit, redo it or whatever, edit it. So maybe you get that. Maybe you get 12 hours to change your mind on your donation. That's another thing why I don't like QR codes. I don't have Venmo, so it's not like I can QR code it and Venmo the money. I'd have to go through more of a process. But Jesse, that's an interesting point. And it's a pretty good point. And I'd find a way to get the QR code out where the people are tailgating as well. On flags flying, something outside the stadium that has the QR code on it to get people that are tailgating as well. Why not? Just immerse everything in the QR code.
Lean in.
Dad, do you have any as like an old school guy, do you have any problem with this, especially on the uniforms with what we've seen already? We know some teams have been putting the Twitter handles on uniforms. Now you've got this. Does any of this bother you in terms of the college football that you've known?
I know I'm the old school guy, but I understand new school. It doesn't mean that some old school still can't be involved in new school, but I get it. I mean, this is the world we live in now. We live in the NIL. So it's about raising money for the collective. So you raise it, you put it on a jersey, you put it on a helmet. No, it doesn't affect me one bit to watch a game and see a QR code flash across the screen when I see a helmet go by. I'm not going to go, oh, God, they got a QR code. Or, oh, God, they have a Twitter handle. So what? So what? They're still playing football. This is just a new age of football where you're trying to raise money for NIL. You have to adapt or die.
It's very cutesy, very mindful, very demure.
The final boss of this will be football team pictures that are so big that usually involve the support staff and everyone else being coordinated to form a QR code of their own, so that now when you're walking around and see that, you can at any time give money to State U to make sure they feel the love. Speaking of people that might need a donation at this point, Jesse, this Delaware State flight snafu on the way to Hawaii has captivated the nation.
Yeah, talk about travel hell. So Delaware State football set to open the 2024 season against Hawaii on Saturday. Now, on Tuesday, they missed their flight to Honolulu because of a bus snafu. So they were going to John F. Kennedy Airport, which is about a 3-hour drive from where they are to begin with, to then board a 10.5-hour flight to Hawaii. So head coach Lee Hall said that they, were having some issues with this. According to CBS Sports, Delaware State has rebooked its travel. They're still scheduled to arrive on time in Hawaii. All of this to get out there and play as a 39-point underdog, guys. Yeah. So a lot of effort to get out there to get their teeth kicked in.
but to also start the season in Hawaii. And I cannot stress enough, so Delaware State plays in the MEAC. They're an FCS team. This is not going to count towards their conference record during the season. And Dad, you said Hawaii needed this. It's a pay game for Delaware State, obviously. They're going to get a big check cut here because Hawaii was supposed to play Oregon in this game.
Hawaii was supposed to play Oregon, but then Oregon went to the Big Ten, so they said they'd reschedule this another time. So Hawaii was looking for an opponent. Hence, Delaware State became that opponent. Now, Delaware State's getting paid, so their travel will be taken care of, and they'll probably have some money. I don't know the exact number, but they're not going to make this move without getting a healthy number. Make no mistake about that. And now, I didn't know Hawaii was in a position to give out a healthy number like that, but they are. So this is more just a horrible situation from a travel standpoint than a financially bad standpoint for them, because it's going to be paid for. But just to drive 3.5 hours, not be able to get on a plane, have to stay at a hotel, get up the next day, get on a plane, fly 10.5 hours, as to Jesse said, possibly get your teeth kicked in as 39 point or 36 whatever point underdogs.
Yeah, I'd like to know what that mindset is like, because we've seen this all the time. The pay games in college football that help some of these athletic departments sustain success going forward come at the expense of the players on the field in a way that always feels a little weird. But in this case, I can't stress enough, you get to go to Hawaii. And as someone that is an alumnus of the, at that point, Sheridan Hawaii Bowl, my redshirt freshman year, that was the best bowl game we ever went to. It was the most enjoyable trip we ever went on in college. And I played in the national championship game, which, forgetting the result, the experience of it, still not as fun as the Hawaii Bowl.
I played in the Aloha Bowl my senior year, and I spent my per diem the first 2 hours I got off the plane at a local bar. So, yeah,
I spent mine buying Armani Exchange t-shirts and I think a Gucci wallet that I used for like the next 5 years. I'll post pictures. The Armani Exchange shirts were a mistake, especially spread out over a torso as thick as mine at that point. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's what happens when you give college kids $500 of per diem money in Hawaii for the first couple of days. What are you going to do? Coming up next, let's check in on old man Aaron Rodgers and see if it is camp or off the field quotes coming out of him next.
April, guys, Robert Saleh told Aaron Rodgers to expect a tough training camp, okay? And with only, a few days left here, he said it was one of the most taxing ones he has experienced in years, and he kind of likes it.
I would say the camp is much harder this year and maybe the hardest in the last 7 or 8 of my career. I knew that. I had a little insight coming into camp that that's what Robert wanted to do. So I think it's been good for us. I give Robert a lot of credit because he, from the start of the offseason, said this is going to be a tough training camp.
So, guys, by Saleh's count, the Jets have taken 300 more practice reps than they had at this point last year. That's pretty noteworthy because it shows this organization not concerned about Aaron Rodgers' age, not concerned about the fact that he's coming off that Achilles injury. Is this a good thing? Like, does it show confidence in Aaron Rodgers' abilities, or are you like, hey, maybe relax a little bit?
Oh, I think this is it's a now or never. It's a Robert Saleh maybe feeling the hot seat. Robert Saleh trying to get his team prepared. By the way, the NFL team with the longest playoff drought of 13 years and got smoked last year after losing Rodgers. So I think this is a culmination of things to get ready for the season, Mike.
I would agree. I think this is one of those things where Rob Saleh knows with some of the new parts they've acquired, they need reps. And especially, we reference it a lot on here, but after the 2011 collective bargaining agreement went into play, you just have a lot less time on the field with guys overall available to you because the players didn't want to grind their bodies as much, wanted to try and help take care of guys, especially aging players. And so trying to manufacture more opportunities for reps is one of the challenges that coaches face right now. And with the 3 new pieces on the offensive line moving in and a rookie coming over here, with all the guys moving around there, with Aaron trying to get back up to speed on the field with the reps with so many parts of this offense, Rob Saleh felt that was paramount. And Aaron Rodgers has said it, Dad. Hey, I understand if we don't have the season we want, we're all probably getting fired. And for Aaron Rodgers, who's had a robust career, who's going to be a lock first ballot Hall of Famer no matter what, and one of the best we've ever seen, that means one thing to him and a very different thing for Robert Saleh, who's still in his first time as a head coach.
Well, yeah, for a lot of these players who still want to play and a Robert Saleh who wants to be a coach, Aaron Rodgers, the end is coming. I mean, for him, it's just a matter of can he stack, more wins and the possibility of another championship before he retires. But for everybody else, it just like we talked about with Brian Flores and coaching different players, every player has a different reason. There are different points in their career from players to coaches. So, yeah, I get there's a little more fire under the seat mentality by Robert Saleh, and let's move things along, as you said. Rookie, new O-line, rookies to break in, and less reps. Again, understand you can't go 2 padded practices in a row. So you have 1 padded practice where you get the reps in, and then you have a shorts and helmet practice, which, you know what, I honestly don't know how much you're getting out of anymore.
Again, it's like anything else. Like as a player that got a lot of backup reps for a long time, you get used to taking the mental reps, seeing all that stuff. But there is no substitute for going out there and actually do it. And there's also no substitute for how pissed off coaches can be after bad seasons. Like I got to Pittsburgh as a rookie in 2013. They had gone 8-8 the year before, did Mike Tomlin and company. And Mike Tomlin was ticked off about it and wanted a physical camp. Like they fit all of the offensive and defensive linemen after 1 injury for knee braces. That doesn't happen in the NFL. That's a college thing. In the NFL, you get to choose if you want to do that and protect yourself or be that much faster on the field. And they had decided because of 1 injury, because Mike Tomlin wanted to hit folks, hey, this is going to be a physical camp. You're all going to wear those out. So it is kind of the cause and effect that happens with these prideful coaches, especially Rob Saleh. We've talked about kind of the discrepancies of a guy who's on the defensive side of the football where, solve your problems with aggression tends to work. And in this case, they're going to try and solve it with reps. And Aaron Rodgers, old school enough. Like in all the things that get lost about Aaron Rodgers, he is a guy from the before times. He's an old school player in his approach. And so as long as your leaders buy into that and that gets disseminated to the rest of the team, you're in good shape. Jesse, very different training camp vibes for the Atlanta Falcons right now. Kirk Cousins apparently getting birthday week down there.
Yeah, things are getting wet and wild down in ATL. So Raheem Morris surprised the team with a water park day at Margaritaville's Fins Up Water Park in Buford, Georgia. It was apparently something Kirk Cousins has always wanted, writing on Instagram years, decades of dreaming about a water park day during training camp. And today, our dream was fulfilled. Coach Morris surprised us after morning lift and meetings. We took full advantage. Guys, you can see by the pictures, they did indeed take full advantage, having the time of their lives. It's been a great week for Kirk, right? He had his birthday. He got to pick a birthday playlist, got to play. I'm sorry, these pictures.
It's Jesse, you don't understand. Like this the doggy bone during camp, that bone that coaches finally throw you where a lot of times it's a surprise. They'll dress it up. Like in college, we would go up to this place called Diamond Lake every summer in southern Michigan where Brian Kelly had a place, and we would go and have a lake day like this. And it would always be, you'd kind of notice because the buses would be lined up outside, and that's a little bit unusual. And you'd come into the team meeting and everything would kind of be normal. And then they would get up and they would put it on the screen or they'd put it on the whiteboard, and everyone would go nuts. And when you've been clanging and banging for this long in camp, this is manna from heaven for these guys in terms of the emotional lift.
Not going to lie, the most I got, and don't get me wrong, I was ecstatic about it, was when I was in Houston and we were warming up for a practice, a hitting practice, full pads, hot as hell outside. And right after stretching, Jerry Glanville called up the team and said, "We're not going to practice. We're going to lift instead." And we lost our minds. We lost our minds. We got to take our pads off. We knew we had to go in and bust our ass for an hour and a half on a lift and still work our butts off, but we weren't on the field practicing. We didn't have no stinking lake trips or water park trips. I'm not saying that as I'm jealous of these guys, but I'm jealous of these guys. Oh my God, to go to a water park, how friggin' cool is that?
And you're unloading in the water. You're buoyed a little bit there. It's great for the legs, all the above. So they had fun with that. Kirk Cousins got to hold the aux cord at practice the other day, and it got us thinking what we would do in the same situation right now. It's none of our birthdays, but we hold the aux cord here. So me, Jesse, and Dad all made our 10-song playlist a la what Kirk Cousins did the other day. Dad, what song were you most excited to get on your playlist here? We're going to pop them all up in a second, but your 10-track playlist, what songs were you most excited to get up there?
I'm kind of probably most excited to go old school with Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen and Freebird by Leonard Skinner. I wanted to get different variations of songs in there, like storytelling, like Gordon Lightfoot, Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald and Railroad Trilogy, great storytelling. Upbeat songs, Summertime by Kenny Chesney, Roll with the Changes by REO Speedwagon. Certainly I had to get Darius in there a few times with Never Been Over. It won't be like this for long because he sang at your sister's wedding, and my daughter and I had our first dance to that song. So that was going to be in there. A party song of Life's Too Short by Darius. And then I grew up in Cleveland, a Cleveland guy, and Michael Stanley for Lover. So I had different reasons for different songs. But the older school songs, Bohemian Rhapsody and Leonard Skinner, really, with Freebird, with that guitar solo in there, is just phenomenal.
I'm with you, Dad. It's great variety in there, and that's kind of what I wanted because Kirk Cousins seemed like it was a snapshot of what he had listened to at various points, especially in his young life there. So I wanted to capture a bunch of that. But Jesse, the ones that had to be in there for me, Never Would Have Made It by Marvin Sapp, speaking of training camp, was the song that when we broke camp at Notre Dame used to be playing every time we'd come in the locker room. It's like a gospel song that makes you feel good after going through a hard time. And then Colder Weather by Zach Brown Band, which has become the wedding finisher for all of my friends. Yeah. It is not thematically appropriate, but man, it bangs with a group of drunk people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all had a pretty good selection here, and I think that you can actually go listen to our playlists. Did we make Spotify playlists? Yeah.
We made Spotify playlists, so go on Spotify and check out the GoJo and Golic playlist there that you can download for what is no doubt one of the most chaotic listening experiences you will ever see, ranging from Tayo Cruz to the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, obviously to Taylor Swift, the Pink Pony Club. It is all in there in the mix right now, and so if you want to rock out to what we're rocking out to in honor of Kirk Cousins' birthday playlist, go check that out at Spotify. We'll post it online as well. Coming up next, let's head back to NFL training camp and talk to a big side of beef with a big job this season. Joe Alt, the Chargers, next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Justin Herbert is back to practicing for the first time since July. He returned Monday, participating for the first time since being diagnosed with that plantar fascia injury in his right foot on July 31st. He'd been on the sidelines in a walking boot for 2 weeks now. At the time of diagnosis, the team said he was expected to be ready for week 1 after completing a gradual return to play process. The guys caught up with the man in charge of protecting Herbert this season.
All right, I picked a good day to wear Notre Dame gear around here as we get to head out now and bring in one of our favorite guests here, former Notre Dame All-American offensive tackle and rookie first-round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers, Joe Alt, kind enough to join us now here. Joe, how's it going, brother?
It's going great. How are you guys?
Doing well, man. Doing well. We appreciate the time. We know you're a busy man right now, trying to navigate the world on the right side of the offensive line here. So I know everyone's dying to hear it. We got to talk to you before the draft about the prospect of making that transition. And now as you're getting going here into your rookie training camp, you're getting ready to be a starter for this team over on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage from your college playing days. So what has that experience been like for you so far?
Yeah, it definitely took a little bit for me to kind of get comfortable. I would say it was more of a mental thing than a physical thing. Just kind of getting my body used to and looking their way. But once it clicked, I've been feeling a lot better, feeling more confident. And now it's just, fine-tune those things that I'm looking at, from practice to practice and game to game.
And so learning a new position, and then the pass rushers in college, which I'm sure you went against some good ones. Now, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack working the one-on-one. How has that been?
Yeah, it definitely was, a shock at start. It's definitely different than college. And, I'm fortunate enough to go up against two of the best. And, our whole entire edge group is so great. So it's been great for me because I'm being able to test myself against the best. And I think it's really helped me going to these last 2 preseason games. I'm going up against the best every single day in practice. So I'm able to improve my skills. And then when it comes game time, just being that much more prepared for a game, being able to go against those guys has been great for me.
Between that, and I know going to one of your O-line mates might not be as much of an option. I saw Rashawn Slater joke the other day that when you try and come and talk to him, he's like, you're so much taller and longer than me. I can't really tell you to do the same things I did. But for a guy that was another first-round offensive line pick for this team who's gone and proven himself at this level, what have you been able to bounce off of him as you've been getting going here?
Yeah, it's been huge for me just to kind of rack my brain on the things that I'm seeing that he saw, a few years ago when he was a rookie, and the transition of, going through and seeing these players for the first time. And he's just really been a great year for me to bounce questions off of and just kind of see how he does things. But yeah, a little bit different play styles and body styles, but he is so successful at his position that I can, bounce my questions off of him and just see how he does it and see if I can, replicate that in my game. So it's been great for me.
There's differences going from college to pro: speed, strength, quickness. What has been the biggest difference for you in going from college to pros outside of the position change?
Yeah, I would say going up against, defensive linemen, their ability to get to their second move, I think, is something. I think the amount of moves and the ability to transition from the first to the second. You might think you're in a good position, and in college, they just kind of hit you with a bull. But in, this next level, it's another move, it's another move, it's another move until they get home. So you're just constantly kind of responding to their next move, and that's been a little bit different for me. But it's been a lot of fun getting used to.
You're getting used to that, but you're also going through a lot of stuff for the first time in this camp. You had great coaches at Notre Dame, no doubt, but you come into a training camp now with Jim Harbaugh, who you saw for years elsewhere in college football at Michigan and certainly knew the reputation. He's been at the NFL level. What has a Jim Harbaugh-led training camp been like for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's been perfect for me. We've been really getting to work, and that's what I needed. I needed the reps. I needed to be able to get these repetitions in my brain, ingrained setting and punching and doing everything over and over again, just getting used to the other side. So for me, it's been great. It's been a lot of reps. It's been a lot of hard work, but that's what I needed. So it's been going well.
You've been doing more 9-on-7 run blocking than a 1-on-1 pass blocking under Jim's tutelage?
I think we've been doing quite a bit of both, but yeah, I think 9-7 might be taking the lead right now.
Yeah. He said that you were an offensive weapon. When they asked him in the draft process why they didn't go after a wide receiver, he said, we view offensive linemen as weapons. Has he offered to throw you the football yet? Because I know you got your start at Notre Dame playing jumbo tight end a little bit your first year. So have you planted that seed, or is it too early yet?
It's definitely too early for that, and I might have to say no. I sweat so much that those gloves get a little too slippery. I don't know if I want that option. My hands might be a little too slick for that. So it has not come down the pipe yet, and I don't want that one yet. That's for sure.
What's the talk of the outlook for the team? Now, you weren't there when they had the offensive weapons that they had and had to get rid of because of casualties in the offseason. So relatively new specialty positions for you on offense. What's been the talk of the goal this year?
Yeah, I think the biggest goal has just been really taking a strong approach to this training camp and getting everybody in phase with each other, getting the whole offense to click, and just being able to really put the work in now so we can kind of build that trust come season time, and being able to go out there, game one and throughout the season, and just being able to trust the guy left and right of you and trust the guys are going to make plays, and, looking for playmakers, what we always say in the room. So just being able to kind of trust guys and see them work through this training camp so we can get ready for the first game.
We've talked a lot about, your head coach and Jim Harbaugh. Certainly everyone's seen him and Greg Roman out in the, the RV lot getting ready for the season. But I want to go even a step further for you. There's been so much talk about this with a team like the Lions, where there are a ton of former players on the staff. For you in the offensive line room, between Mike Devlin there, between, Nick and Hardwick, who is an offensive lineman for this team for so long, how different is it, and how much impact does it have having former players that have been around ball at this level in the room with you right now?
Yeah, it's awesome. Like you guys know, my dad played, so it's kind of that similar feel where you can go in and you have that connection where they've played recently, they've played in the NFL, they know what the room is like, they know what you're going through, so you just connect on that much more of a real level. So it's been great for me to kind of transition to the NFL and have this O-line room the way it is, because I think I'm being taught at a very high level, and I'm being able to learn, similar to how I was taught being raised with my dad. So it's been really easy for me to kind of flip the switch in the room for sure.
Well, so let's bring up your dad. I played against your dad. That's how old I am. I played against Mike Devlin, your O-line coach, when he was a rookie. So as far as your dad, I tried to coach Mike and my son Jake, who was a tight end. Mike was the O-lineman when they were in grade school and high school, and really obviously not a lot in college. And I don't think they listened to me a whole lot. Do you listen to your dad at all, or you just kind of act like you're listening to him?
No, I listen to my dad with everything. I think just because he played the exact same position, you can't really tune it out, because he did it at a high level and he did it very well. So I take every little coaching that I get from him, and he watches all my games and gives me his scouting report on myself after the game, and just being able to really trust him, because I know how much he cares, and I know how much time he puts into watching the game and replaying it at home on the TV and stuff like that. So I take a lot of pride in what my dad says and listening to it and trying to work on it every day, as well as my coaches. So it's been no, I really listen to my dad and what he says.
See, Dad, there, it's your fault for playing on the wrong side of the football. That's why I had to respond the way that I did.
Oh, because I played on the athletic side of the ball? Is that what you're saying?
You know what? Listen, if you can look Joe Alt in the face and say you think you were a better athlete than this guy is.
Listen, I couldn't say I'm a better athlete than Joe, and I didn't get by his dad when I played against him, so I don't really have a leg to stand on here. So
that's a fair point. Well, Joe, listen, we've talked about some of that stuff there. I'm curious, your dad, you mentioned, what advice did he give you making the jump to this level in particular? Because all jokes aside, with my dad, I kind of had someone who had walked the exact path I wanted to. And so each step of the way, I felt like I was walking in, at least armed with info. You still have to experience all this for the first time. What did he hammer home, especially as you're getting ready to head to your first NFL training camp?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that he said and it hit home with me is you go from, being in college and, being at Notre Dame and being the guy and doing the things you're doing, and you're going to the NFL, and it's the best of the best. And every day you're going to be challenged. It's not like, it was in college where you might be able to, get a bye in a game where you don't really have a whole bunch of talent you're going against. In the NFL, it's to be the best of the best every single day. So I think that was the biggest thing that hit home with me. You cannot take a single rep off, a single day off, a single thing off, because it's gonna show and you're gonna get exposed. So I think that's the biggest thing he kind of forewarned me about coming into the pros, and just being able to be ready to work every single day, and don't take a defeat as something that puts you down, but take it as something you can learn from and just, grow from and move on and get better at whatever you got beat out in doing. So I think that's the biggest thing I've taken from my dad, stepping into my first training camp.
What about, I'm sure your dad maybe talked about a rookie show. Did you guys have a rookie show or have to do any singing or anything?
No, we did not have any rookie show here at the Chargers. So that was something I was expecting, but didn't end up having to do. So I was told that one, but we did not end up having to do that one.
All right, there we go. Wow. You dodged the bullet on that one.
Yeah.
You know what? You guys got the new facility right now. You got plenty of other stuff going on. How's that treated you, by the way? It looks pretty sharp there for a lot of NFL facilities that don't normally have to dress it up like that.
Yeah, this facility is amazing. It's got everything you ever need, and from the outside it looks amazing, and it's just as good as it on the outside as on the inside. We have everything we need, and I think it's allowed us to really start this training camp off in the right way and being able to kind of both go hard on the field but then also recover inside and be ready for the next day.
No, it's no doubt. It's some incredible stuff there, and for good reason, as you guys are trying to build the foothold continually in this city right here. I want to talk about your quarterback. We haven't seen him on the field for a while since Justin's been dealing with that plantar fascia injury there, but getting there and being around a guy who, they've already invested that second contract, franchise money in as the player. What has stuck out to you about Justin Herbert and being around him this offseason so far?
He's the definition of the ultimate competitor. You step on the field with Justin, he steps into that huddle, and we're going to win, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And I think that's the thing that sticks out to me the most. It's a different feeling when he's in that huddle and when he's leading that offense. And you want to do everything you possibly can to give him enough time to find the open guys and to lead that offense. And, that's the thing I think that steps up the most to me is just the ultimate competitor. He'll talk crap to the defense and do whatever he wants because, he's going to compete and try to go win every single snap.
Have you allowed yourself to think, preseason, obviously it's good work, but it doesn't count. Game one, have you allowed yourself to think forward to that against the Raiders and one Max Crosby, the man who goes 150% at all time? Have you thought about your actual first live game?
I've been trying to stay in the moment as much as I can with practice to practice. Obviously, I know, game one, who it's against, and we know what I'm going to be seeing. So I've been watching film, of course, in the first game, but I'm really just trying to stay in the moment at the time and just trying to get, a little bit better from day to day. And when it comes, game week, then really start honing in on what I'm going to be seeing and trying to really get a jump on, what I can see in film.
All right, well, let's talk about a big moment. We're talking about your first NFL game here, but at one point in time, you were a freshman getting on the field, ended up starting and playing in a bunch of games your freshman year at Notre Dame. There's been a lot of talk in South Bend about the guys tasked with replacing you and Blake Fisher heading down to College Station in week one. So, and I know those are guys, some of whom you were in the room with. I know there's some freshman faces that are potentially getting involved there, but from what you know about that room and what you know about being in a situation like that, what would be the advice that you give to those guys getting ready for one of the biggest moments in their career in that environment?
Yeah, I would start by saying I have a lot of respect for, Coach Rudolph and what he did with me last year and how he leads that room. And I would say really just, listen to him and listen to what he has for coaching because I think he's been around the game for a long time. He knows what he's saying. So especially, coming as a freshman, you've been taught one thing in high school and you think it's the answer. And, you kind of wake up to college like, oh, this is a different system. It's a different game plan, everything. And I think being able to both listen to the coach and what he's saying, but then also find those leaders in the room, the older guys who have been through this offense and learning it and just kind of learning the differences between, being in high school and being in college and just kind of experimenting with them and how they see things and then trying to fit it into your own game. Like you're never going to be able to mold yourself perfectly into one of the older guys, just not possible, but you got to find some of the things that they do well and see if you can add it to your game. And if it doesn't work, then you got to kind of find your own thing. So I think the biggest thing is just listen to the resources you have. You got great leaders in that room. And you also have, I think one of the best offensive line coaches in that room as well. So that's kind of what I would give that advice to those freshmen, those guys who are stepping into new roles.
For Joe Rudolph, what does make him special in your mind? You played for a couple offensive line coaches, including Harry Heastand, who I played for, so yep. I know all about what Coach Heastand stands for. I was never coached by Joe Rudolph, so what are those guys getting in that room being coached by him?
Yeah, I was very fortunate with both Coach Heastand and Coach Rudolph. I mean, Coach Heastand taught me really what I know about the game, from the basics up, and I think that really is what laid my foundation. It allowed me to excel my sophomore year, and then once I got with Coach Rudolph, it was now I kind of had that foundation. And Coach Rudolph was big about, finding ways to, and if it's in pass pro, adjusting my set timing. So maybe it's not always, the same exact set. Maybe we're going to, throw curveball, maybe jump them just to keep the rusher off of his main plan. And then I think in the run game was a lot of, I learned that hands were important and that was everything. In my sophomore year, I learned how to start using my hands, but then Coach Rudolph kind of started talking more about a little bit different of a change of hand placement and certain run blocks and stuff like that I try to take to my game. And I think those are the biggest things that I took, this last year. And from my year before that, just really putting that foundation of offensive line play that I didn't really have yet.
Yeah. Harry, I know Harry will do that to you for sure.
It made me the player I am today. I needed that, and it allowed me to grow as both a player and a person. And I have a lot of respect for Coach Heastand. He taught me pretty much all I know about the game at the moment. So
How odd do you think it's going to be to watch Notre Dame and you're not playing for them? I know you're on to the next level, but you'll be able to see that first game against Texas A&M and not be on the field.
Yeah, it's going to be weird, but I'm going to be rooting from out here in LA, that's for sure. I got so many buddies on that team and, guys I care about, and, I wish them the absolute best. I'm with them watching, cheering in my blue and gold, back out here. But, it's going to be different. But, I wish I was still hanging out with some of those guys, but they're gonna do great, and they got a great coaching staff and a great group of leaders there that they're gonna go out and have a great success in the first game.
There is no doubt they're going to miss the hell out of you. That is for sure in that group there. We won't keep you too much longer here, Joe, but I was curious as someone. So I moved out to Southern California about 2 years ago, and I know the adjustment that went on. I saw you on with Kay the other day talking about adjusting to the price and a few of the different things out here in Southern California. What I wanted to know on that front is, have you been inside an Erewhon yet? That was a huge step for me. Have you not? All right. I need at some point the Joe Alt field trip to Erewhon because I felt out of place there as a bigger guy, not from the West Coast. So you as a giant amongst men's in that store. Is there any place that you have been out here where you really felt the culture shock yet, where you went and you were like, this is so much different than what I'm used to?
Oh, I can't really name one thing, I don't think. I've been, as training camp started, I've been mostly hotel facility, and that's where I've been. So I haven't really had that culture shock yet. But I'm looking forward to it. I'll let you know when I get that first opportunity where I'm really like, oh yeah, this is like the whole thing for me right now is different. It's not like one thing I can really pinpoint.
Do you know about the Erewhon? I've never heard of the Erewhon place. I've never. It's
actually a big thing that guys talk about out here, so I do know about it. I don't even know where the one is, but it's a really nice grocery store with expensive stuff, I guess. But you probably might see me walk in there, but I don't think I'll be buying anything.
Joe, you can afford it. You can afford it, Joe.
Like I said, you're one of the few people that lives out here that could comfortably purchase something there and not feel like they're limiting their chance to find housing later on. So I wish you luck in that endeavor there, but more than anything, man, wish you luck with the upcoming season. We're super excited for you and know it's going to be a hell of a year for the Chargers. So congrats on everything, man. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' time.
Thanks, Joe.
Awesome. Thanks. And boy, Dad, Joe Alt and everyone in Chargers camp sounded real happy after Justin Herbert got back into that lineup yesterday. The quotes coming out of there from Harbaugh and Greg Roman and even guys on the team just about how different the offense operates when Justin's in there. And we know it had been a rough outing for Easton Stick through the preseason games. They brought in some different quarterback bodies in there to try and push him along in a little bit. But it's a good reminder there is nothing that replaces a franchise quarterback at this level in the NFL, and they got theirs back, and it feels nice.
Yeah, a Harbaugh quote, which would feel like a Harbaugh quote about Herbert being back. I felt like music should be playing. I thought I heard music. Voices of angels, maybe. It felt great. It felt great. That's a Harbaugh quote. Yeah, listen, there's nothing like having the steady hand at the helm back leading the ship. And that's what you have in Herbert because we know about the completely revamped offense that will probably be revamped in the way they go about it, which is odd with the way Herbert can throw the ball, the gun arm he has, how they'll may rely on running the ball more, just mixing it up more. But while I don't have high expectations for the Chargers this year, I am excited to see the difference in play calls and the difference in run and pass.
Second best odds at DraftKings Sportsbook right now at plus 320 behind the Chiefs, who are obviously the overwhelming favorites to win that division. And I think based on what we've seen from the Raiders quarterback situation, the Broncos probably in line to start a rookie, they do have a chance to be the second best team in this division, which might not be saying a ton, but it's saying something.
And that's Herbert, right? Because the defense has been struggling as well. We keep talking about the offensive weapons they lost, but the defense has struggled. That's an area that needs to pick up as well as we try and fit new pieces on the offensive side of the ball.
And it sounds like during camp, that side's jumped a little bit. But yeah, Justin Herbert getting out of that boot, moving around well. And when you're coming off that, you analyze everything. And I saw the practice report saying he ran over to celebrate after a touchdown and showed no signs of any discomfort on the foot. So we are truly back in football season mode right now on the NFL front there. Good news with there, we in about 10 minutes, we'll have Garrett Nussmeier from the LSU Tigers. But coming up next, we're going to take a look at college football overall and start to nail down our picks for conference champions heading into week 0 of the season. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It was a chaotic, nay, a cruel summer in college football. All right, 15 FBS teams officially moving conferences. Big 12, Big 10, ACC all expanded, destroying the 108-year-old Pac-12 conference in the process. But now it's almost time to watch it all play out, okay? Before week 0 kicks off, we got to get in all of our previews, picks, predictions for the college football season. Guys, we're going to focus on all those crazy conferences, who's going to be crowned the champs, what's going to happen. So which Power 4 favorite, I want to start with this, are you most confident in winning their conference?
Yeah, Dad, because this is interesting. It means something different this year. Remember, the committee has now updated their criteria, where winning a conference championship used to be one of those data points that was supposed to be a leg up for the team that had that on their resume. Now it gets you an automatic bid. Winning your conference in the Power 4 means you are in the dance in the college football playoff. The highest ranked group of 5 champion will also be a part of the college football playoff as well. So this is a win and you're in situation now instead of a win and it just helps your resume out situation. But as Florida State found out last year, wasn't always the thing that you needed to get it over the hump. So, Dad, to Jesse's question, as you look around now, we've got the teams that have been the favorites. Georgia, the biggest favorite to win their conference at plus 190 in the SEC compared to the field, but Ohio State, the obvious favorite in the Big 10, Utah in the Big 12, and Florida State in the ACC. Which of those favorites are you most sure is going to write it down in pen for the CFP?
I think I'm going to go with Florida State in the ACC.
Wow.
I think they'll battle Miami for the title, and they play Miami in the regular season. They don't play Virginia Tech. Those are probably the 3 teams that technically be in it. But you know, they get a new quarterback in DJ Ungala. I'm horrible with his last name. Uyunglele. They pick up 5 former Alabama players in the portal. They did lose 7 starters on defense, but they had another top 10 portal recruiting class. So I do like them. I like them. You know, I know about Ohio State, but I think there's Oregon there. Georgia could be a couple of teams that could possibly battle them, and in a conference that can eat each other up for sure. I think there's a few at the top leading off with Utah when we get to the Big 12, but I'm going to go with Florida State.
Man, that's a bold prediction, just considering how much talent they lost to the NFL. Now, again, stability is the flavor for Florida State in a lot of critical areas, right? They're bringing back some important pieces on a defense that was an absolute nightmare at the end of the season once the quarterback injury had ravaged the offense. They carried them through the last few games of that year. You get DJ, that's been a veteran player in an offense with a play caller in Mike Norvell that's been one of the better ones in college football. Both coordinators back on both sides of the ball, and like 190 starts on the offensive line amongst a very deep, well-coached group under Alex Atkins. So I can understand that, Dad. It's just with the DJ factor at quarterback, Jordan Travis had been there for so long and grown so much with Mike Norvell. And we've seen DJ's a talented quarterback that might feel like he has a ceiling. I'm a little wary on that just because the Clemson defense is still going to be a bat out of hell. And if Cade Klubnik can take any step forward in that offense, he's not built like the rest of the Clemson quarterbacks, but I don't think he'll have to be because that defense has weathered the storm. I think between them, it should be the year for Miami. Like if things don't start to happen this year with the talent they've got there, sound the alarms in South Beach because things are going wrong. I would probably, Dad, it seems weird at this point. I keep coming back to Utah just because of everything that we return. Obviously, it's so predicated on a quarterback that hasn't played in an entire year coming back and being the healthiest version of himself in a conference that's got some depth. We talked about Oklahoma State. We talked about Kansas State that's got talent at that position. But Kansas State's losing like their entire offensive line and some critical defensive pieces and is changing quarterbacks. Avery Johnson had a great bowl game, is an incredibly talented prospect. But I keep coming back to a Utah team that knows what it's about under Kyle Whittingham, is getting its quarterback and star tight end back. The O and D lines are always such blue chip stock around there. I thought about Georgia, but man, Sark has got this Texas team in a place enough to where I think they're a real viable threat in that conference, even with the receiving turnover.
Yeah, I would say of all the teams changing conferences, we talk about Oregon, we talk about Texas the most. I think Utah, I agree. I think Utah has the best chance to win their conference. Texas may have the shot against Georgia and Oregon against Ohio State, but I do think Utah is the clear-cut favorite over Kansas State and over Oklahoma State. Iowa State might be a sleeper in there. We'll see. But I do think of the changing teams, Utah has the best shot to win the conference.
So let's talk about the Big Ten. Ohio State is a team, I said for a while, Georgia and Ohio State, you can put in pen. However it comes, they're going to be in the college football playoff because of the depth of those rosters. In Georgia's case, Carson Beck is a lot of people's pick for the top quarterback in the class right now. He's near the top of the Heisman Trophy favorites, and he's on a team that Georgia has recruited a depth of talent in that roster that's different from everyone else. Now, wide receiver, a little bit of a change up in that room. They dismissed Ra Thomas before the season for off-the-field issues, so it's not without losses there, certainly. And Amarius Mims, who they were without a bunch last year due to injury, but was a top-round pick at offensive line, gone too. So there's some things to talk about with that team, but Ohio State, Dad, plus 155 to win the Big Ten, ahead of Oregon at plus 200. And at this point, I feel less and less good about it with every day because Ohio State, they got all those guys to come back on defense. They got Chip Kelly over. There's so many reasons to believe. But Will Howard and what his ceiling looks like, and that offensive line, and how much Chip Kelly can get out of that group that was good but not college football playoff elite last season, are what have me picking Oregon to win the Big Ten right now, who's also dealing with a transfer quarterback coming in Dylan Gabriel, but solidified on both sides of the ball in terms of coordinators that are going to be there. The offensive line, again, going back to when Mario Cristobal has been there, the trenches have been built the right way in Oregon. And so I think they have a chance to come in. They host Ohio State, too. I think that's a big factor in this. Yeah. Ohio State goes out to Eugene to play in Oregon, which is a tough environment to play in. So I'm picking Oregon to win the Big Ten.
I think Oregon is offensive heavy, and I think Ohio State is defensive heavy. So that should tend to lead to a hell of a matchup when they play in Oregon. So another team that could potentially play 3 times in the season, regular season, Big Ten championship, and then the playoffs. But I think that's a good pick with Oregon. I really do.
So I'm with you. I would pick the ACC. I would pick Florida State right now to win the ACC. So we've both agreed there. We both agreement Utah in the Big Ten, or excuse me, Utah in the Big 12.
Big 12. I think I'm going to go Ohio State in the Big Ten. I'm going to go Ohio State. So you're going Ohio State.
I'm going Oregon there. And in the SEC, are we both picking Georgia?
Yeah. I again, the conference where you could beat each other up, but I'm going to go Georgia. Yes.
Like I say, Georgia, an incredibly difficult schedule, but it kind of feels that way for everyone in the SEC at this point after conference realignment. They're not quite the Big Ten that has 18 teams going into this season. And we know Alabama, lots of change, but lots of talent. LSU, if they can get the defense right, and Garrett Nussmeier, who we'll talk to next on the show, trying to take over for an offense that lost a bunch of pieces. They're waiting in the wings. Everyone thinks Ole Miss and Jackson Dart in this offense that Lane Kiffin has steadily gotten better and better, could have a chance to knock down the door. But I still think Georgia and Texas are the ones playing there. As far as the group of 5, Dad, you look at those teams there. There's a couple of names I think people should keep in mind for who could be in that running. In the Mountain West, Boise State, who are used to perennially kind of being the group of 5 name du jour, is up there. How about the fighting Chuck Martins, my former offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, who's been now a decade at Miami of Ohio, coming off a MAC championship last year and getting his quarterback back. Brett Gabbert was lost to an injury in October, and they still kept it rolling. He comes back here now. They are going to try and, I think, get to the MAC title for like the 3rd time in 6 years. So I think they could be involved in that. App State, always a froggy out. Liberty was the team last year, so
I think I would lean toward Boise State. They and Appalachian State have been the 2 teams that have been up there in the group of 5 as far as wins over a number of years. Appalachian State actually is the winningest program in college football over the playoff era, not to make the college football playoff. So could they rectify that? But I would probably lean Boise State.
Yeah, I think Boise State, Maddox Madsen, I think beating out Malachi Nelson in the quarterback battle there, the former USC transfer. So I think them and Miami of Ohio, teams with defensive depth too, certainly the Red Hawks, and both quarterbacks under center that they trust. Going to make for an exciting year. We'll get to our playoff picks overall coming up later this week, as we know it's not just about winning your conference title anymore. But coming up next, let's head down to the Bayou and talk to the new man at the helm for the LSU Tigers next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We are so close to actual college football games. 13th ranked LSU will open their season September 1st by hosting 23rd ranked USC in one of the marquee matchups of the week 1 slate. They're going to have a new QB under center with Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman and bolting for the NFL. GoJo caught up with the Tigers' new QB1 to talk about expectations for the upcoming season.
All right, let's head down to Louisiana and talk to LSU starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, kind enough to join us right now on behalf of Powerade. Garrett, certainly want to hear all about that coming up here, but how you doing, man? We're almost to football season, almost to the real deal. How's camp gone for you so far?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. It's hot down here, and practices are long, but we're getting ready to play, and that's an exciting feeling. So.
I was going to say, you're from that. So we had the total opposite experience where I grew up in the East Coast and went to school in South Bend, Indiana. You're from down here. You're at LSU now. Do you ever get used to the heat?
I don't know that it's humanly possible. You can get, I guess you could say, more accustomed to it. But I mean, it's so hot out there sometimes that it's the same. It's kind of impossible to escape it. So.
There you go. Yeah, no, it is a different level of heat down there. I tell people you don't get used to the cold either. So on either end of the spectrum, sometimes it's just tough like that. But for you this year, you're getting used to being in the driver's seat now. You're the starting quarterback going into this season. After a few years backing up, getting some action on the field. I know as someone that spent a long time backing up before I got on the field at Notre Dame, you always say, hey, I'm preparing like a starter just in case my moment comes. But now that you're finally there, getting ready to know you're the guy walking into week 1, has it felt different? What's the experience been?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, naturally, just, the way, you prepare with reps is different. Like you said, I felt like I took great pride in my preparation as the backup, but it's a different feeling for sure. I mean, that you're the guy going out there on the first snap of the game, so there's this different level of, I don't know if I'd say motivation, but I guess you could say responsibility. You feel like, you got to make sure you set an example for your teammates on how to prepare and how to, how do you want to set the example of, what you believe the starting quarterback at LSU should be doing, so.
And how did your time backing up, Jaden for the last 2 years specifically kind of influence that? What did you take from watching him in the position that you're now in?
Yeah, I learned a lot from Jaden, obviously. We're very different when it comes to on the field. Our play styles, I think anybody knows that, are very different. But, the most I learned from Jaden was in the building and just, how he interacted with his teammates, how he led in here, what he did on a daily basis, how he prepared like a pro. And so that's probably the best thing that I learned from Jaden was just, seeing the way that he prepared for games, that he played a lot of college football. And so, he kind of had a routine down pat. And so, I would try and learn as much as I could and take notes here and there from him and how to prepare and things like that. So.
It was an impressive quarterback room you guys have had there, and an offense that's going to look a little bit different this year. We know Mike Denbrock left after his couple years down there. Joe Sloan, your quarterback coach, though, now calling the plays there. How important was that, seeing him get elevated into that role, knowing the relationship that you guys had already?
Yeah, it's awesome. Coach Sloan is, the best person in the country to coach me, I feel like. And, that's just because of the relationship that we've built, over time. 3 years of, him being honest with me and where I was at the beginning and how to, get better. He did a really, really good job of, not just, telling me what he wanted me to get to, I guess you could say at a point, but also, he kind of showed me the steps on, how to get there and what I needed to do in order to improve, not just what I needed to improve. And so, it means a lot to have, that relationship, with your coach. And it allows for a level of honesty. If you ask anybody in this building, they'll tell you that Coach Sloan is probably harder on me than he is most people. That's okay. That's what I would want and what I would expect, to have that responsibility as a starting quarterback. It's on you at the end of the day. And so, he pushes me to be great. And so I really appreciate that. And I value our relationship a lot.
You mentioned some of the things you wanted to work on. We don't get to see everything behind the scenes. We've seen when you've gotten on the field. We certainly saw the bowl game performance that everyone saw as a great sign of things to come. But what have been the things you focused on most behind the scenes that either coach wanted you to work on or you knew you needed to get better at to be here?
I think for one, it was just meshing with my teammates and, taking over that starting role and building trust and building connection with all those guys. Whether it was extra routes on air sessions with the receivers or taking the lineman out to eat or just doing simple and stupid stuff, just spending time, around him as much as possible and just, getting to build that connection and allowing us to, just mesh together naturally. And, I think that, we've done a good job of that as an offense, just coming together and meshing. And so obviously, I'm very excited.
Where's your favorite place to take the O-line out to eat? You got a couple of great players there, a couple of high-looking draft picks for next year on the edges.
Man.
What do those guys need to fuel up?
Hey, I mean, they really eat anything. Take them anywhere. I tell people a story all the time. We went back to Monroe, Louisiana, for Will Campbell's. He had a camp. Kids camp. We stopped at Popeyes and I probably had a receipt the size of, I don't know, like a scroll out of a movie. Just rolls on rolls of Popeyes. And so that's how I describe what it's like taking the lineman out to eat. So.
It sounds about right. As a reformed fat guy, I can't confirm that that definitely tracks. So good on you for taking care of the guys. It's one of the cool things I think about this era in particular, now that players are getting money coming in, is you can do some of the things like that might not have been as available to certain guys when I was playing there. So that's an awesome move by you. And like you said, it's great for the camaraderie there. Let's talk about your head coach. Brian Kelly has been here for now this is going into his third year at LSU, his third year with you. He was a guy I got to play for. You and I actually a weird amount of similarities. The son of NFL players, had to wait a little bit, got around through a coaching change that ended with Brian Kelly as your head coach. So I knew him in 2010, 2011, 2012, when he was still building this legacy as a coach and was a little bit fierier, a little bit younger there. What is being coached by Brian Kelly like in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about Coach Kelly is the standard that he holds his players to. And he doesn't lower that standard. He doesn't bend that standard for anybody. He expects everybody on the roster, everybody in this program to act a certain way, and not just in here, but also, outside the building as well. The way that we do things is all strategic. And, we have SWAT teams and we have daily responsibilities that we have to do. And if we don't do them, then we're, under the line. And there's all kinds of different things that Coach Kelly does, and it's all strategic. And I think that's the best part of, how he coaches and what he does is, he makes his players believe, through results, and it's not a result, mindset, but the process leads to the results. And once you start to feel them, you start to realize, okay, hey, this makes sense. And so, we fell in love, we try to fall in love with our process, try to fall in love with doing things the right way. This is his third year here. It's year 3. So, we definitely raised the expectation, and, we raised the responsibilities for us. And so, I think it's something that's only benefit us.
There's no doubt, but trusting the process can be difficult. And in this day and age in college football, there's a lot more options and things out there. There's plenty of guys in your situation that would have probably left or transferred once they got behind a guy that was going to be there for a couple years. So what went into your decision to stick it out and stay at LSU?
Yeah. Louisiana is my home. I was born in Lake Charles. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana. And, it means the world to me to be able to have the opportunity to represent this state and represent, this university.
Well, you're doing a great job representing them, and I know they're excited to have you at the helm this fall. You're also here with us today representing Powerade. We talked before. It's New World. Name, image, and likeness is a wonderful thing. So what do you got going on with the folks at Powerade right now?
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to announce that I'm officially, working with Powerade. And I'm my very first commercial, so I'm excited about that. We'll see how my acting skills are, but it was a really cool experience, and so I'm very thankful to Powerade to be able to represent such a powerful brand. So.
No, it is one of the drinks that has gotten me through a lot of rough mornings in my life, but certainly a lot of athletic competition as well. And I have no doubt going to be an awesome partnership. We're pumped to see the acting skills on display, but more than anything, pumped to see you guys help kick off the season. I know it's going to be a ton of fun out there in Vegas, one of the standalone games. So, Garrett, best of luck with all that, man. Congratulations on all the success, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon. All right?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. God bless.
All right, time to finish this off the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. They all help. And check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, which you can stream free on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, DraftKingsNetwork.com, and more. And if you missed that or our great guests, thank you to Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU starting quarterback, and Joe Alt, Chargers rookie first rounder out of Notre Dame, for joining us today on the show. You can catch those interviews wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show today. This, that, and the third is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Head to knockaround.com, use promo code GoJo Golic, and pick up your new pair of go-to polarized shades. I got mine right here, holdovers from the Super Bowl. These things rock. I wear them every day. Knockaround. Support the people that support us. Again, code GoJo Golic at knockaround.com. Get you some good ones there. Dad, Jesse, I want to take you guys back in time for this a little bit. Kevin James, obviously the famed star of King of Queens, Paul Blart, Mall Cop, and many other fantastic comedies from over the years, went viral and became famous way back in the day at the Daytona 500 for this viral moment.
I just got 3 things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
How could I
just
forget
got 3 things to
seven
say.
moment from I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry, which sent off this chain reaction to get us to here and now, where Kevin James reprised his role as screaming microphone pregame celebration guy, throwing out the first pitch for the New York Mets. Check this out.
God bless America! God bless our troops! God bless the New York Mets! And gentlemen, Mets play ball!
Amazing.
Kevin
Amazing
James
work.
is like the last vestige of true physical comedy that was the hallmark of my childhood. Dad, it feels good to just see a big guy scream into a microphone.
Oh, it is just so good that he did it back then at Daytona. He does it now, and that's just part of who he is. It's so good that he's just not afraid to keep going down that rabbit hole. It's an awesome thing.
Jesse, I get fired up every time I see this. How does this hit you?
Yeah, it's funny. It is funny.
Oh, no.
No, it's funny. I mean,
Oh, God. You can tell me-
I get the
Jesse,
bit.
have you ever seen King of Queens?
no.
So is this a guy thing?
I hear
Is this
boos
just a
coming
guy
from the
thing?
control room. Like, they literally just were like, oh, God. They're all like,
it's a guy
oh.
thing to you, isn't
What
it?
did you watch,
Jesse,
like, coming home from
it's a
school
guy
or
thing.
when you were sick during the day as a kid? Did you watch Raymond or King of Queens or anything like that?
So first of all, my mom was crazy about the television. We had one television in our house. It was in the basement, and we were only allowed to watch like an hour of TV a day. Okay, and that was when we were older. So I don't know what I was watching Charmed. I was watching that show about witches. That's what I was watching.
Geez, so so this is a guy thing.
Yeah.
Like this is Kevin James. Kevin James is a true guy thing.
It is.
seems.
Well, and I think it's also men of a certain age, because again, I think that brand of comedy we've seen kind of aged out of movies and aged out of popular television for the most part. And so I think it is largely men of a certain age that appreciate what Chris Farley and him and all the rest of these very physical comedians from back in the day do. I'm just glad Kevin James still has the pipes to go out here and get this done and appreciates the culture of where he came from here. Jesse, speaking of men, let's get to that. A viral social media post talking about men and the least attractive things that they do.
Yeah, men. So basically, there's this social media post drawing attention to the least attractive hobbies in guys, okay, according to women. So it shows a percentage of women and what they rank these hobbies. So before we jump into this, can you guys guess like one that might be on here? Senior is very sure he knows.
Oh, I'm positive this has to be number one or near the top is video games, without question.
Gojo, you in agreement?
I would probably agree. My sister basically like made my brother-in-law sell his PlayStation when they got married. So I think that's got to be near the top of the list.
Yeah, well, ding, 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 fellas. You are correct. That is the number one least attractive hobby for men to have, according to women. And I can second that. It sucks.
I before I saw this list, I actually wrote down some things. I had video games, number one. I had hunting and fishing on there. I had any kind of collecting, like comic book collecting or any kind of collecting.
Collecting is on there
as a thing. I think that's on the list. I don't know if golf would make the list because a lot more women golf now, so I don't think that made the list.
Didn't. No. Neither did hunting or fishing.
Yeah, no,
really?
Dan, it was pretty much anything that's remotely nerdy. Like you mentioned, collecting figurines is number 2 on this. Magic tricks was number 3. I'm glad online trolling got named onto this list.
Is that
if you're
a hobby?
online trolling, you are a loser,
Yeah.
and everyone finds that unattractive,
I
not
agree.
just women. So,
I agree.
But is that a hobby? I mean, what's your hobby? Oh, I'm an online troll. I mean, is that, boy, you really got to have some sick life if that's your hobby.
Yeah, well, that checks out.
I mean, what is a hobby but the things that you spend your free time outside of work doing, and some people choose to make that their thing. Taxidermy also finding its way onto the list, which I find surprising. Very outdoorsy. You can work with your hands then. I just feel like that's something that I wouldn't necessarily think of right away.
I mean, I'm surprised it made the list because who
Me
does
too.
that? Not because it is super weird and unattractive, but I don't know anyone who does it.
Because I don't know anybody who does it either, but I know plenty of guys who gamble. Was gambling on this list?
Yes, gambling was on this list. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which we find objectively attractive
it is,
here at GoJo and Golic.
So hot.
So hot.
Listen,
very demure.
Listen, it is the person in our family who loves it the most is my wife. So she would not object to gambling at all.
That is true. At GoJo and Golic, what's the most attractive thing that men can do? I would put parallel parking up there. I think a well-executed parallel park job in front of an audience, to me, is when I feel the most attractive.
I think it's cooking. That is up there.
Oh.
Guess who cooks? My husband. Yep.
Oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that demure of you?
It's so demure, Senior.
How can he be a snack and cook at the same time? Incredible. Jesse, let's get to the third. Some big news for nostalgia fans.
Yeah, so you can be very unattractive playing this game, all right? We will not be hating on this. Backyard Sports franchise is coming back, okay? So it's returning in the coming months, and it's going to have the same aesthetic of the games released in the 90s and early 2000s. So this could all be thanks to Jason Kelsey. So it's been bounced around bringing this back, but he brought it up on the New Heights pod. Here we are. It's coming back. I never played this game, but GoJo, I'm guessing you did, and you're very excited.
No, actually, I was going to say I have no attachment to this game. Never played it growing up. I don't have the same affinity for it that so many people have, but Dad, it is a robust part of anyone my age's video game culture, and they're doing it now. They actually partner with Major League Baseball, so they're going to feature one player from all 30 teams in this updated version of Backyard Sports 2001. You're going to get Randy Johnson, Tony Gwynn, Ken Griffey Jr., Cal Ripken Jr. amongst the athletes in there, and other Backyard Sports have also partnered with their major leagues to do that. So for people that love this, which there are a lot of them, they're getting some great news.
Well, listen, I can normally recognize a video game when I see clips of it. I must have been doing something else in the 90s and 2000s because I don't even recognize that game when we were just showing the clips of it. I don't recall it. I don't recognize it. I don't have any clue that it ever existed.
I stand corrected. That was also, including the major league players, it's what they did in 2001. People are hoping they do that again, and someone hoping for that too is Bobby Witt Jr., who had Pablo Sanchez on his bat for Players Weekend. So this is something that I'm sure a bunch of modern players that are around my age also pretty geeked up about now. So whether you love backyard baseball or you've never played it at all, that shouldn't stop you from downloading, subscribing, and rating and reviewing our show, leaving it a 5-star rating, and watching us here Monday through Friday. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.